Yo, it's Casey, and this is one of my favorite AM Hoops videos ever. I talk about some of the most controversial NBA topics in recent years, like did LeBron use steroids, with an expert. This guy's name is Mike Matthews. He's written books on health and fitness. He knows all about this stuff, like really scientifically researched. And we looked at part of Jimmy High Roller's video about LeBron maybe using steroids, a video that Jimmy High Roller recently took down for some reason. But we started with all these crazy body transformations that we saw in the offseason, beginning with Zion Williamson and how he got so fat. And this is him now, and they say he weighs about 300 pounds. So
looks like he likes food.
Is that it? I mean, that's what I'm trying to get from you here, Mike, is like Pelicans fans are worried about two things. One is his injuries, his knees and his ankles, things like that. Number two, they're worried about is his body weight. And so is it something that he can't necessarily control? He's the victim of his genetics, or the difference between this and this, is it more, I guess, willpower, for lack of a better term?
He's definitely nobody is a victim of their genetics. Our genetics can make us more, let's say, inclined toward leanness or fatness. This is something that is very under our control, in that our body fat level is just a consequence of energy in and energy out. The amount of calories we're eating and the amount of calories we're burning. And if we are consistently, for example, eating more calories, if we are consistently taking in more energy than we are burning, we are going to gain fat, vice versa. We are going to lose fat. Clearly, he has gained body fat, and we know that, and I'm sure he's very active. I mean, these guys are training for hours a day.
He also broke his foot in the offseason, and that's another...
See, then that makes a lot of sense to me.
But you would also have to make the mistake of continuing to eat the same amount of calories. So when you break your foot, you have to...
Very easy to do, though.
Very easy to maintain that level.
Yep, because we have eating habits that are ingrained.
It bothers me, just like, dude, if this is your job, but I don't know. I mean, that
Oh, no. I would just approach it not as a judgment on him, but if I were a professional athlete, I would very much have that attitude that my job is not just to play the sport, but it's also to manage my body in such a way that I can play the sport as well as I can and for as long as I can. And so in the case of getting hurt, yes, then, but it's very possible that Zion simply, he doesn't know what I just described.
One other body transformation type thing that I wanted to ask you about. Now, I've heard some people say that if Kevin Durant, if he wanted to, he could look like Giannis. But people look at Kevin Durant and they think, no way, man, that's just his build. Are those people correct? If KD really wanted to, could he be Giannis physically?
It's a good question. That's an impressive transformation there.
Well, on the left, I think he's 17 years old, and on the right, he's probably 25.
That's not surprising to me. I'm sure he has worked very hard at it. Now, as far as Durant goes, if I look at where he's at now, how old is he?
32.
I mean, to go from that picture to Giannis's yoked picture, he would probably have to gain that's probably 20-ish pounds of muscle, would be my guess. And that's a lot. He has maybe about 15 to 20 pounds more muscle than the average person, unless his legs are far more developed than, which is possible. And so, yeah, I think he could do it. I wouldn't be surprised. It would take years, probably 2 to 4 years of training to gain that much muscle.
So those were sort of the body transformation things. And I wanted to ask you about this whole Chris Paul, because he's had this late career renaissance. He says it's all because he changed to a plant-based diet. At the same time, he became a huge investor in Beyond Meat. So I don't trust it. What say you?
There are a few ways we could look at this. So that point of him becoming an investor, you could also say, well, he became an investor because now he's a true believer, right? Was it the change to a plant-based diet that improved his game? Did it improve his energy levels, his focus? Or is that simply a correlative factor, meaning that something else or other factors were driving those improvements, and he incorrectly assumed that it was the switch to the plant-based diet? So that's something to consider. So for example, there could be, and this would be something I have to ask a basketball person, the team that he went from and to. Is that a factor? Did he start eating a higher protein diet? Just as a question. Probably not if he switched to a plant-based diet. Also, I'd be curious to know what his diet looked like previously. So let's say he was eating enough protein, but he was eating very few nutritious foods. And this is something that many vegans miss. And I've heard from these people many times over the years. They think that it was the complete elimination of animal foods that did it, when in reality, it was the addition of a lot of nutritious plant foods. They didn't have to get rid of all the animal foods though, you know?
All right, so my next thing that I wanted to bring Mike on for was because Jimmy High Roller put out that conspiracy theory video. I'm gonna play like a 15-second clip and then get your thoughts.
In Miami, LeBron became more than just a freak of nature. In fact, he became suspiciously inhuman. He gained 25 pounds of almost pure muscle and he just didn't look the same. Add that to the fact that he only missed 14 games in 4 seasons in Miami, and this is where eyebrows began to raise. While his draft class peers and teammates began to slow down, LeBron was getting faster. Rolls his ankle, back the very next game like nothing ever even happened. Plays night in and night out, doesn't miss a beat, not once. And people were taking notice. Some of the effects to HGH use, muscle gain, hair loss, and cramping.
You know, he's known for playing a lot of minutes. You know, 2 years ago, he had his first major injury. So kind of Iron Man, right? I mean, that could just be genetics, right?
Certainly, unless that is just not the norm, right? So
it's not the norm at all.
Okay, so
he's an outlier.
And then we're looking at an outlier among the outliers of outliers then. And so it would be a bit hard for me to believe that out of all of these extreme outliers that we have in the NBA, you have this one guy who's the super extreme outlier, who's the extreme outlier of the outliers, right? And you go, how do we explain this? Okay, one hypothesis, right, is that he is a once in a 100-year physical specimen. You know, okay, maybe. What's another hypothesis? Drugs. And to just dismiss that would be very naive, right? So in basketball, with lax testing, the incentives are obvious. Imagine being LeBron James, and some people are using drugs in the NBA, some aren't. And, you know, it's very easy to rationalize something like this when we're talking about, it's not just, at this point, it's not just money. It's also about legacy, right? It's about going down as the greatest basketball player ever, one of the greatest athletes ever. And that has to be an extremely motivating factor, right?
To him it is, dude. And there's going to be a lot more talk of this when he passes Kareem. He's going to pass Kareem for all-time career points, which is going to happen in the next 2 years, and everyone's going to be talking about that. Then, you know, the him versus Michael Jordan thing gets even closer, and all of this stuff that we're talking about extends that race and keeps him in it for that much longer. So that makes a lot of sense.
Back in 2014, when LeBron rejoined the Cavs, you may recall him not looking or playing the same as years past. He had to cut all that weight he gained while in Miami and was back to 250 pounds.
He went from somebody who was jacked by anybody's standards to gaining 20 to 25 pounds of muscle in 1 to 2 years is impossible to do naturally. He would already be at about the top of his genetic potential for muscularity naturally, right? And then to gain an extra 20 to 25 pounds of muscle, it represents about half of what the average guy can gain, period, in his entire life, right? To do that in a year or two is utterly impossible, period.
He's going from age 26 to age 27 to age 28. Does that alter? No.
It doesn't matter. It does not matter. You're looking at 20-ish pounds of muscle year one for a guy who responds well to training. Year two, we know, is about half of that. Your potential is about 10 pounds or so, maybe 15 if you're a real high responder. Year three, it halves again. Now you're looking at about 7 to max 10 pounds of potential muscle gain. And it halves every year. If you just run those numbers, by year 5 or so of doing things mostly correctly.
Then gaining 25 would be impossible. He put in all this work to get to near his potential before that. Like, before he got to Miami, he was in Cleveland, and what he was doing was being the best he could be every single day, and he was succeeding, by the way. And so for him to then jump at that point in his life to gain 25,
to make year one gains,
that seems, you're right, that's insane.
Now, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, what I would say is, well, he says he gained 20 to 25 pounds of muscle, but he may even think he did, or he may be embellishing because that sounds cool and it gets people talking. Okay, then let's say he gained 10 pounds of actual lean tissue and the rest is fluid. No way, dude. If you've already gained 30 to 40 pounds of muscle, which I'm looking at these pictures, and unless he has always looked like this, like literally since he was 18 years old, to go from skinny to what I'm looking at here. So to be able to do that, and then to claim to gain 10 pounds in 1 year from 30-ish, no way. No way. It can't be done naturally. I'm sorry.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for doing this, dude. I know that you're not a basketball guy, but you're definitely a health and fitness guy, and clearly those two things are interwoven. So much appreciated, man.